Welcome to the Healers Podcast, where we inspire and guide healers through business expansion. We give voice to incredibly abundant healers to share their stories. We dive into the quantum field to unlock the energies of conscious creation. We also develop digital tools to help you grow, which you can find on healless.com. I'm your host, Yuli, and I'm grateful you chose to join this space. Now let's go deep. Hello, my dear friends. Another super exciting episode of the Healers Podcast. And today we have Darlene Cordero with us, who is known as the Wellness Connector. She worked with leading wellness brands, teachers, and practitioners. After a decade in finance on Park Avenue, she transitioned to media and event creation, eventually joining Chopra Global in 2019. With a BA in arts management, Darlene brings her business expertise and experience with high net worth clients to the wellness industry, excelling in community building and impactful events. She also created the Healer's Playbook to support wellness professionals by making the business acumen of healing arts accessible to all. Darlene, you're right at home. This is where we talk healing and business. And it seems like you're one of the very rare people that I feel in the space that managed to combine both. So I'm just thrilled to talk to you and explore more of your book. And, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I think that finding people that are in alignment like this, there's so much to do. And so I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of work to do, and we're going to get right into it because that's what we do here. We don't have time to waste. We're all busy. Everyone who's listening to us probably is having an amazing practice and clients to take care of and business to take care of. So really our job here is how can we bring the tools? How can we inspire people? And you wrote a whole playbook on that. So I think we're just going to dive into that and see, how did you choose the subjects? What did you decide to focus on? What is the story behind the book?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so excited to be connected to the healer, the practitioner, the educator. I like to say all of those words because many people connect to these words in a different way. I want to go back to how it started. I think, you mentioned in my bio that I have a BA in arts management. And at the time, I didn't even know what that meant. I knew I loved business because I that was my background. I always knew that I grew up with entrepreneur parents, but I loved the arts and I loved beauty and I loved the expression of being around people that were artists. And who knew that years later I would be managing talent at Chopra Global, which led, in this, you think about this space, Deepak really is the pioneer of this work. And the faces and voices that our company would want to showcase. And so my work really came from coming from media, leaving banking and moving into media and working in that talent piece of connecting the right talent to the right events with the right red carpet, working, that whole piece. And then when I got to Chopra, we really wanted to create what is the evolution of a brand like Chopra at the time was called the Chopra Center and Deepak's work, and what were the faces and voices and collaborations that we wanted to bring forth. And I had the privilege and honor to be able to do that. And so what I saw was that there was so much, and this is before the pandemic, there were a lot of voices and younger conversations and people and diversity that I wanted to bring to Chopra. And all of these people became friends and became people that they trusted me. And they would come to me, a lot of them, and say, what do I charge? I don't know what to do with this partnership. This person is asking for this. How do I structure my partnerships, my conversations, the emails, just that back and forth, that business acumen that we talk about here that you mentioned in my bio. It's how do I do that? And what I realized was that there wasn't anyone really, or an organization, people really focused on that piece of the healing arts, of the business that now, 2023, what year are we in? 2024, is now this like, billion-dollar business, right? And in a sense it's how do we get this information out to every yoga teacher, every meditation teacher that's out there as a solopreneur, because that is usually what's happening. It's usually one person that is managing their calendar, managing their social media, marketing. They're also doing the work of the healer, which is so profound. And so when I left Chopra and Deepak sold the company, he sold it to Amazing Partners about a year and a half ago. Actually, next month is going to be 2 years. Time flies when you're having fun. And I started Wellness Culture, really with that intention. How do we give this information, provide service and support to the healer, the practitioner? And so I started with a mentorship program. It was 14 weeks. We went through mission, vision, values, everything from like, how to determine pricing, how to market yourself in an authentic way, not the way everybody else is doing, right? Like everybody has their unique ability and ways in which they show up for the clients, but also how they show up and are best showcased. Some people are amazing on stage. Some people are amazing writers. Other people do best one-on-one with like connections by just connecting by text with their clients. Like, and all of that is okay. Like there's no right or wrong. And I wanted to give the practitioner, the healer, the license to be like, I'm going to do it my way. And I wanted to be like, look, the best do it their way. And so you should do it your way. And like Deepak didn't do things like anybody, right? Like he had taken his degrees and being a doctor and then, immersed it in this ancient wisdom of Ayurveda with his teachers. So like, do it your way, and having that confidence to know that you can do it your way. I think it's in that yes, like you can do it, that's support. And I really wanted to do that. And so with the healer's playbook, it's the idea of like taking that mentorship and making it accessible to everyone. So maybe not everyone could do 14 weeks, or they want to be able to have it as a companion. When one day I'll do it again, the mentorship, but it is something that could be part of your business and evolution of how you show up to the world, and that that you're not alone. That's what I want people to continue to know, is that there are resources and people and community out there as they build their businesses.
Absolutely. And such an important work that you do. And I love all this experience that you're bringing and sharing with this amazing audience. And I'm curious, as someone who also worked a lot with healers personally, what are some of the themes and threads that you saw that you really felt like, okay, we really have to work through this block, and this is how we're going to work, and what advice did you offer?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest themes for us all, because we all are our own healers, right? And figuring ways that we show up in the world. Some of them end up being in the practice of supporting others, right? In this way, is the fear of being, I think it's two things. It's the fear of being seen, right? And it's the fear of understanding your value. And I think they're very connected, right? Like what you think about yourself and how you value yourself and your expertise, and then how people perceive you and how you're perceived is like very connected. And if you don't have a grounded, because of your background, because of past lives, because of whatever you're here to do in this life, and you have any, which by the way, the wounded healer, I mean, this is what you're here to do, right? You're here to heal that piece of you to then support others. And I think that that's unlike any other industry, it is not the same as like, opening up. And I wanted to say barbershop, but like, I don't know why I said that, but like, it's not like just doing that, because that could be very therapeutic, right? All of these things that we do. But when you're in the healing arts and you're here to support others, there is a piece for the practitioner, the healer, to do some of that work on themselves and be okay with that process, right? And I think that that's where a lot of that like understanding like what to charge, how to really focus on themselves and their own practice and understand the connection between their own practice and how they're consistently working on, the thing that they're here to do. And then how that's connected to the community that they serve. And there is a through line, because you'll see that a lot of, this because of the work you do, a lot of the work is that wounding is what they're here to do and how they show up for their client. And if they're not working consistently on that and facing it and seeing it and focus so much on the other person and not on themselves, then, that's when that connection of like, what do I charge? And do people really value me? And then all of those insecurities start creeping up because the focus is not on themselves and more on like the business side of all of it. And they're not in that flow, right? That flow is the goal. The goal for all of us is, and I haven't figured it out completely. No one has. And this idea that everybody has, that all these people that we see, and I'm making quotations of like these like, aspirational people that we see on social media that are making, 6 figures. When I see that like I cringe. That's not my way of working. I'm not here to give you a quick fix, become a millionaire. Perception. I think that you become rich and you become abundant, you become whatever it is you want when you really are in that flow. And that's what we're striving for, right? Every day we wake up, we do the work on ourselves, we show up for ourselves, and then we can support others from that place. And then authentically and genuinely, people then connect to us, right? So I think that that's the goal. It's like being seen from that perspective and then being, really conscious of what is it that I am putting out that then I'm receiving, and how do I value my work and how I'm showing up for others? And what does that mean for me on pricing or having opportunities come my way? It's so connected, all of that. I hope that answered your question.
Oh, yes. And I have so many things to unpack there because you touched on,
yeah.
Let's start with being seen, because I agree with you. It's like a root of a lot of the other issues that kind of sprout from there. How did you, and by mentoring so many people in your career, what are some of the things that you found work for your clients or the people you worked with that help them to overcome that challenge? Because it's such a big one. And I feel like we can have like 10 episodes of that and never like finish exploring it fully. But give me some, something maybe quick and easy that people can feel like, okay, I don't have to unblock this whole giant being seen piece, right? What did I do today that will bring me just a little closer?
I know this sounds like more complex than it is, but I think that understanding your astrology and understanding your chart and understanding your human design gives you an insight a bit about, first, what is happening in the transits of like why you haven't wanted to be seen. So you have like that information. I love like data and information to be able to be like, okay, this is why this is happening. And understanding that this is why we could spend 10 episodes on this, because not everyone's path is so different, and it happens in different times based on their chart and based on what they're here to do, right? Their north and south node, and understanding those pieces. I think one of the biggest pieces that I think that I tell people when they've done my mentorship and when I work with people is I get them connected to my astrologer and my human design practitioner. Why? Because I want to know what I'm working with, right? And I want them to know what they're working with. And I think that I'm going to give you the example for myself. I had a massive fear. I know this sounds weird because I talk so much, but I had a massive fear of public speaking. So until about 2 years ago, I never did face video. I never kind of like shared myself. I didn't think I had anything to be like shared. And it's funny because I am outgoing and I love people. I love connection. I love meeting new people. But the public speaking was very much connected to a wound in my childhood, right? And when I started doing that one thing that my friend Avery Whitmore, he's an amazing sound bowl healer and practitioner. He was I had brought him into Chopra to do sound healing for our retreats. And he's been just such a support for me as a friend of like pushing me and being like, wait, basically we need somebody that pushes us, and says, hey, I see that in you and acknowledge it. Right. And hey, how can you show up? Because I already see that you can do this. So like, let's do one thing. And I remember I did my first audio like reel, and he stuck me in like a closet. We were in Hawaii. We had just done a retreat with Deepak, and we were just spending a few days with some friends, with a group of us in Maui or something. No, we went to Kauai, and after the Maui event. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm in this beautiful place. Avery's outside the closet. I think you could do this. And I did my first audio where, I mean, you could hear my voice crack. Like I was so nervous. But I did that one thing that pushed me out of my comfort zone. I was supported. I had somebody that said, just do that one thing. And then that one thing, people were like, oh my God, I love hearing your voice. And then I started hearing the feedback, and people were like, oh, you should do more of those. And then the next time I did I did the face to video kind of thing on Instagram. And then I just started pushing myself to, okay, what do I have to say? And that was so uncomfortable for me. And and I've had moments, and I have to tell you, like, I had an interview maybe 10 years ago on TV, and I completely went blank. The interview never went out. I'm not just saying this to say this, like, it's happened to me. I was on stage. It's happened to me on stage. I could not speak. And now I do. And what I do believe that it had to do was me pushing myself, and taking away a little bit of like, I think the Virgo in me is very perfectionist, and that I wasn't going to say the right thing, so I don't practice or get ready. So I realized that when I get too much in my head about the thing, because I want it to be perfect, I don't show up authentically, and then it doesn't come from my heart. And if I talk from my heart, then and it's in service to someone else. And I think the practitioner, when you understand that what you're sharing is going to help someone else, and it's going to potentially change their perspective on one thing or shift them in a huge way, that then your voice matters and that you have something to share. And so it's a disservice to someone else to not share yourself. I tell that to my clients all the time. Like, you not showing up and like saying the thing, or come on, like, what do you have to lose? Like, what do we all have to lose, right? Then pushing ourselves with the right support, the right timing. Again, remember, like, thinking about, okay, what are the things that are happening in your transits? What are the seasons that you're going through? Well, right now in my chart, I'm supposed to be going out there. I'm supportive. I'm supported. If I do that, I'm supported. And I've done that, and it's brought me to this point where I wrote my own book. Like, I would have never thought about doing this. Like, I grew up in Queens, New York with an immigrant family. I never knew an author. I never knew anyone that had graduated from college. I didn't have those examples. And I hear this from a lot of people from different communities that haven't had those examples. Be the example. Be the example you never saw. So then you could, support and like inspire someone else. And I think that's why at Chopra and all of the work that I do, I try to include diversity of opinion, diversity of voice, diversity of like, who people are and the circumstances, because that representation really makes a difference for a brand, for a community, and being intentional about that. And specifically in the wellness space, that can be very one-sided. When I remember I went to Kripalu, I don't know, a decade ago, I was the only Latina. I was the only person that was as young. I remember everybody was like in their maybe 60s. And I was like, I don't know. I know I'm supposed to be here. I don't know why, but I'm here. Or my first yoga class, and not everybody has that push to say, I don't know why, I'm going to follow my intuition to do these things. But I think the more and more we're seeing it much more after the pandemic, which is amazing. A lot of people in different communities are showing up for these practices, which are so life-changing. But yeah, representation matters. And yeah, I could go on a tangent on all of this and talk.
I
But
can listen to you forever because you say some like really important things that people do need to listen, and
yeah,
sharing your personal example. It's just so powerful. I really, everything you said pretty much resonates, and I have so many follow-up questions. And also I love that you use like analytics. Like I'm with you, astrology and human design.
yeah,
I mean, also like just from my experience, being a mental projector, you realize that's why I do podcasts because
yeah,
I love talking to people and
yeah.
bounce. And this is how I get sometimes my
Yes. Oh, I
deepest
just got
thoughts.
goosebumps. That means it's woo, good stuff. Oh, it's so beautiful. And this is the flow, right? I put this out there. We connected. We're in flow, right? We're creating because it's coming from that place. Imagine if I would have said, oh, no one has anything to, and by the way, I thought it. And like, this is the whole other thing. Like, I published this book and then I went into a deep depression like 2 weeks ago. I think we all and think that once the day we get there, we do the thing, we like get the book out, we get that partnership, we get that client, that then we're going to be filled with this euphoria that it's like, oh, I got there. By the way, never. You'll always doubt yourself. I've heard this from many people and I've seen it because I've prepared people to get on stage and worked with big partners and brands and artists and all of that. Every time someone gets off that stage, I'll look, how did I do? Did I do okay? Everyone does that because everyone has that insecurity. They want to know that what they did mattered or that it made some, because we are human, no matter who they are, no matter if they filled up stadiums with, thousands of people, they're always going to have that feeling. And so I like to share that because I want people, and I have other friends. I remember telling my birthday was a few weeks ago. That's when I published the book. And I told my friend that's published a few books, and I said, I just feel so like empty. I don't know what this is. And she goes, oh no, it happened to me. I'm like, okay, good. I'm not alone. You know what I mean? Like, because you don't know. I know next time I publish a book, I'm going to like Bali or something after to like, vacation and get my mind out of the thing, because I think that we assume, right? We assume that we do this thing, we create something, and then all of those insecurities creep in and they're still there, and all the wounding is still there. And now we have more out there that we're just like, oh, we feel so vulnerable, right? I think that ultimately that's what holds us back, right? That vulnerability of being seen in such a like raw way, right? When we start speaking, we start showing our faces, when we start writing, when we start sharing our personal stories, it's not easy. But the freedom of that, and then when you get that feedback in return of like, wow, that really helped me, or that's inspiring, then you go, okay, it's worth it. It's worth being uncomfortable. It's worth kind of putting myself out there. And I think for the practitioner, healer, educator, the thing to focus on is that it's like, how can I share myself, push myself, right? Do that one thing that's going to push me out of my comfort zone, knowing the data, knowing like what I can do and what I'm going to be supported from. And then what's that one step? I always, because we like you mentioned, like, we're not going to solve that today, right? We're not going to solve like how to become, the top 10 speaker of the world on mindfulness. But what we can do is like one thing today that's going to push us closer to that. And even in the book, I start with, many of us know what a SMART goal is, right? Start with a SMART goal, one thing that's tangible that you can do, not like the whole plan of like, conquering the world, but what's that one small step? And sometimes it's just making a connection with a new person. It might be like, oh, I'm going to, make a video today. Oh, I'm going to send an article, newsletter, which I can't tell people enough how important like connecting with their audience in that way is, and how important that building that community of people that already know you is, versus like focus so much on the external, like social media world. And how my best connections and my best referrals have been from people that I know, not from an Instagram reel. So Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you mentioned, I mean, so many great points, but this power of like creating, don't underestimate your community. Like even if you have just, I don't know, 5, 10 clients, this is your community.
Yes.
And they are your, vessels of expansion because each of them holds a community of their own. And I think what you touched upon here, and you brought up with this beautiful story of overcoming your own block of being seen, is when we are going through expansion. And, a lot of it, like I thrive in my expansion mode, but it also terrifies the heck out of me.
That
I'm
is the
just,
most uncomfortable
it's
ever.
like I'm in this constant process of, expansion. Then we have a little break. Okay, let's settle in, then let's expand again. And that constant rate, but it can be very uncomfortable for many people because expansion mode is not always natural for everyone. So I think by normalizing it and saying like, yes, even people that you see that are in that expansion process, they still go through some of the down
Yeah.
aspects of it, because once you expand, you have to create like new space. You have to find yourself again. You have to ground yourself again. That process is not always easy, even if outside looks like a huge success. You still have to get comfortable with that new frequency that you just reached,
I
and
love
that's
that.
not easy.
I love that. Yeah, I love that new frequency. Like you're expanding and you're then kind of grounded, integrating, use that word, right? Like integration. And integrating in that way it feels really much more uncomfortable because it's new, like you said. It's a new version of ourselves that we don't even recognize.
Right. But I think the reward is just so much greater. I mean, when we expand, we just have the opportunity in this lifetime to, like, I feel like sometimes I live multiple lifetimes because I'm constantly pushing myself to
That's
expand.
so amazing.
Which is like I want to.
Congratulations.
No, this is like the productive overachiever in me.
Yeah. Yeah. I
you
love
know,
that.
but it helps in this case. But I think again, just normalizing that integration time, and it's not easy. And I wish more people talked about it publicly too, because
Yeah.
we still, even the people in this healing space, I find sometimes we follow the rules from other industries.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we talked about it, but actually, and we have so much to unpack there. But my background is in influencer marketing industry. That was my
Wow.
first company, so I'm very familiar
So
with
you
that
know what I'm
culture.
talking about?
Yes,
What?
the content creator culture, and the perfect. And I started before Instagram, right? Before we had the Instagram influencers. So it was really interesting to watch people get caught up in that like always perfect image. And I think it's becoming like a little more raw now, thankfully, to some of the new formats that were introduced. You get stories, you get more like behind the scenes, more raw stuff, but it's still pretty much a polished image. And I think we're just so caught up in that as a society. And for healers, people that need to resonate with people, it's their like natural need
Yeah.
to resonate, because otherwise they're as empaths. They get a lot, they take on a lot, right? So I think it's really hard to just have that pressure that it has to be that perfect, and we don't have the normalized, integration or the sometimes like the raw emotions that come with it. So I wish more people talked about that.
Yeah. I think we show it sometimes could feel performative, it does. I mean, we all are healers and sometimes we can perform, in the healing arts, right? It could be for performative. But I think the more that I think one of the things that I think about when I'm processing something and then bringing it to my community is, have I processed it? Have I kind of integrated how I'm not dumping, right? A lot of the dumping of like how we do with our friends and family, right? I'm not dumping. I've processed it. And now let me show and share that lesson with my community from that grounded place of integration, of understanding the lesson and of understanding like how can this be supportive to my community and inspiring, right? And I think that that's the goal. And I wish and hope, and I hope that this conversation and many others, that we can inspire other people to continue to share in that way, to say, hey, like this is really, yeah, I got massively depressed after I shared my book and published my book. Why? Because I felt really vulnerable. Is anybody going to buy it? does it matter? Then I had to remember, right? I created a SMART goal from the beginning, like for myself. Like I do take that, the things I teach and share, I do, use them for myself. And I was like, why do I want to create this book? Right. And I think going back to that, it's always going back. And the book really talks, the Healer's book really talks about going back to like, what's the intention? What's the mission? What is it? Why am I doing things? Right. Remembering that always. And I remember that what I wanted was to publish it. The goal was that it was published. And if I published it, then I had reached the goal. The thing is that things change. No, after you've done it, then you're like, oh no, but now I want this, right? We're humans. If only we were, other creatures that don't feel this need to constantly shift, which is so beautiful. But then I was like, well, I want to be able to reach this goal and that goal. And then I had to remind myself, I'm constantly reminding myself with this book and this project. It's like, why did I create this? I created it to publish it for myself. I wanted to do something like this to be able to support the healer, the teacher. But I also ultimately, my goal, and this is why I'm going to do every podcast. I want to connect with every organization that has healers and practitioners that are working with them. I want to go
Which you're doing right now. You're doing
yeah,
right
exactly.
now.
This is what I want to do because I want every practitioner to have this book, every yoga teacher, meditation, breath work, all of it, because I know it's going to be supportive to them. And if I could do that in whatever form, then, then it's, and however long it takes, right? This is like a project. This is a lifelong project for me.
Amazing. Such a good reminder. Well, we could end on this beautiful note, but I just cannot leave you without touching on the second subject that you mentioned early on about the subject of putting worth on your services, because then this is something, again, another one we can talk forever. Yeah. But I always love to bring it up in this podcast because I feel like we cannot emphasize enough that, all of this is great and a great service to the humanity. But if you don't personally connect with the flow of abundance and you constantly live in lack, then why are we doing it to ourselves, right? So what is your, maybe experience or something that you can share on that subject that can be really powerful for our listeners?
I think that the most important thing with the connection of offerings and understanding what to charge. And I do a practice in the book where I kind of outline what it takes for people to kind of bring their services to life. What are the tangible things that they invest in the products or things that they are spending on, right? So like those tangible things. And, the preparation for seeing the client, if they're traveling to see someone. So I really do make it very grounded. The kapha in me, it like wants to ground that practice of like the reality, right? Like what are your expenses? How do you show up? Then what's the time that you're then integrating after you've seen a client that you need, right? Because I think when people start there, oh, well, if I have 5 clients a day, and I'm like, you can't have 5 clients. I mean, it depends on what you're doing, right? Like if you're doing energy work, that's like a lot of work. But like, what is it that you can reasonably do without like burning yourself out, right? And taking care of yourself. And having that honest conversation with yourself, what are my expenses? And so therefore coming from that place, and we could go into like the energy of abundance and the energy of money. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there that do that. I'm like, let's just get to the grounded understanding because that's, we don't need another book on that.
I love that so much. Yes, please bring the practical.
Like, I just feel like there's so many books about that. And our community comes from that place, right? The energy and someone else could do. I mean, Marianne Williamson has an amazing book about that. Like great. Like I would recommend a client, go read that book and you will reconnect in the way. But what I did with this book is really focus on what are the tangible things and don't compare yourself to somebody else. I mean, I've had conversations with people who will say, I found out how much this person makes and I'm going to charge that. I'm like, what, how do you like, I mean, and this is, this is when, it's like they, we haven't done the work to understand who you are to then compare yourself to the others. I think people really have to understand that the years of experience, the accreditations that people have, the education, I think it does matter. I am not going to knock anybody that's done a weekend certification, but a weekend certification does not equal years of, working with clients. And at the same time, there's people that are gifted that don't even need a certification or don't even need anything, right? That they are born and like put on this earth to heal. So it's a really interesting thing to keep all of those things in mind and then understand like that you're not practicing on somebody else and you're really doing it from a place. So then that exchange is right. And that connection between the healer and the practitioner, the one being healed and the practitioner is connected. And I think that where you live has a lot to do with it. The pricing around, understanding the market is really important. But just because a practitioner charged $5,000 for something doesn't mean that's you. Because is that going to feel in alignment for you to do that? And also, energetically, it's all about energy, right? Like, okay, let's get a little woo-woo. It's all energy. Like if you charge that amount of money, are you giving that value in return? Or does that person have something else that could be of value to you to support you that you need? Because I also think that that's really important as well. So I think that when you do my practices in the book, you get really real about the numbers. You can understand what is your minimum. And I like putting them in tiers. It's like, what's the minimum that I would do this for? And what is my rate? And what's that middle ground, right? Like kind of putting it in tiers of like what it feels like. And of course, you're going to always want to go for the top tier. But why am I going to get on this call or get out of bed? What is it worth me? Because if not, then that's when that like self-worth, that understanding, well, people don't want my services, or that instability that starts creeping up on a lot of practitioners is because of that, because they haven't done that initial work and they're comparing themselves to other people. And the reality is that there's no one else to compare to you. You are uniquely positioned. Each person, each practitioner has been put on this earth to do very different work. And so that comparison is really detriment to the healer.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. And I think what helps me in those situations, it's also learning to separate when it's ego talking, right? And I think this is the comparison. It only can come from ego, because if you're doing it from your heart, it will never even show up there, that kind of thought.
Yeah.
So
I love this. And one thing I do want to share, and it's something that I would love to talk to you about, even on a side note here, is that I've done different ways. And I think my show, Alive with Dar, which I'm recording more seasons and more episodes soon, is that I realized that during the different methods of like how I'm supporting the healer, what I really want to do next as a continuation of this book is to have a membership model for the community, because it's an ongoing process. There's questions that happen every day, every week. And so I'm launching in October a membership model. It's going to be called Wellness Spotlight. And so we'll have weekly calls for the practitioner where they can have forum where they can ask questions directly to me or to the other healers and practitioners, and also be showcased on my newsletter and also on our social media and also on the show. So like kind of giving them more visibility, which is, I love that you're doing that as well, because I think that that's what we need. We need to unite more. Like you are doing such important work. I can't say, well, she's doing that work. Well, I can't do. No, we need to come together And I think one of the things that are so important is that we do unite on those fronts when we have the same mission. How can we support each other? Because we're not in competition. This is not finance. This is not
Yes,
finance, and we're not in media. We're not in that place. We're not in the sales. We are in the healing arts. And so let's act like that. Let's support each other. There's no competition here, and there's no gatekeeping. And so I think being able to support each other and guide each other, to that abundance and community and support, I think it's really important, because I do want to have the ability for practitioners that say, anonymously or, kind of one-on-one with me to say, hey, I have this opportunity. What do you really think I should do? And just like being able to just support them in that day-to-day process. Because there isn't enough resources for the practitioner. There just isn't. And there's so much for the consumer. There's so many apps. There's so many different, studios. But where is the practitioner being supported in their business? Who's healing the healer? That is the question that I keep asking. And so we're just going to keep knocking on doors until people listen to that. We're here. And I love that you're here. And I can't wait to share with other people that your work and the work you're doing, because I think that the more we cross-pollinate and kind of support each other, that's when the magic happens.
I love it. Darlene, you're speaking my language. You're living my mission. So we're definitely joining forces.
Yes,
but
please.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And definitely we're gonna link to your beautiful book in the show notes. So please go and buy the Healer's Playbook, and please check out Darlene's community. And I just love this spirit and energy of collective support. And I really can thank you enough or thank us for finding each other.
Yes. You see, the universe just works, in beautiful ways. And, putting myself out there is, and you putting yourself out there, that's how we make it happen. So,
exactly. I love that we came full circle. If we didn't work through our being seen, or in my case, being heard, blocks, not seen yet, but we wouldn't be here.
No. Yes, if we wouldn't be. Exactly. It's one step. It's going back to that. It's one step. And that's more than enough.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again.
Such a pleasure.